Imagine you are a hunter-gatherer 50,000 years ago. You're trekking through a forest when suddenly you spot a bush shimmering with bright, ripe berries. Your brain gives you a little ping of reward, a chemical squirt of dopamine. This feeling is nature's way of saying, "Great job, do that again so we don't starve." For most of human history, these pings were rare and hard-earned. Finding a mate, killing a mammoth, or discovering a clean water source were high-effort, high-reward events. But then we did something strange. We took that ancient biological reward system and plugged it into a global fiber optic light show. Today, you don't need to find a berry bush, you just need to reach into your pocket. Every time you pull down to refresh a feed, you are pulling the lever on a digital slot machine. It turns out, the internet isn't just a tool we use, it's a biological architect that is physically rebuilding the machinery of your mind. But how does a bunch of pixels change the physical structure of a human brain? And if our social structures are built on these broken brains, what does that mean for the future of our species? Let's zoom in.
Section 1. The dopamine arms race. To understand what's happening, we first need to clear up a common myth. Many people think dopamine is about pleasure, the reward you feel when you eat pizza. In reality, dopamine is about anticipation. It's the wanting chemical, not the liking chemical. It's the signal that drives you to seek, explore, and pay attention. In the wild, this system has a cool-down period. You find the berries, you eat them, the dopamine drops, and you go back to being a chill human. But here's the thing. Algorithms don't want you to be chill. They want you to be engaged. Silicon Valley realized early on that the most effective way to keep a human looking at a screen is to trigger variable ratio reinforcement. This is the same logic used by casinos. If every post you saw was amazing, you'd eventually get bored. If every post was terrible, you'd leave. But if the quality is unpredictable, if the next swipe might be a hilarious meme, a shocking news story, or a notification from a crush, your brain stays in a permanent, itchy anticipation. What's really happening is a hostile takeover of your prefrontal cortex. When you spend hours in this loop, your brain tries to maintain balance. It thinks, "Whoa, way too much dopamine activity here. Let's dial down the sensitivity." To protect itself, the brain actually reduces the number of dopamine receptors. This is called downregulation. This is where things get weird. When you have fewer receptors, the normal, quiet parts of life, like reading a book, watching a sunset, or having a slow conversation, start to feel agonizingly boring. They don't have enough signal to reach your new, higher threshold for stimulation. We aren't just distracted, we are physically raising the volume required for us to feel alive.
Section 2. The architecture of outage. If it were just about individuals being a bit bored, that would be one thing. But we are social animals. Our brains are designed to coordinate with others to survive. Imagine for a moment a small village where everyone shares a single well. To keep the village healthy, people need to talk, agree on rules, and keep the water clean. Now imagine if a mysterious mist descended on the village that made everyone hyper-reactive to insults, but only if those insults were shouted from far away. That mist is the algorithmic feedback loop applied to our social structures. Algorithms prioritize high arousal emotions. In psychology, these are emotions that make you want to do something, specifically anger, outrage, and fear. A nuanced 3,000-word essay on the complexities of urban zoning doesn't get shared, but a 10-second clip of someone being owned or destroyed in an argument, that spreads like a wildfire. It turns out that the internet has created a structural incentive for polarization. Because we get more dopamine hits from us versus them narratives, the platforms feed us more of them. Over time, this changes how we see our neighbors. In the physical world, your neighbor might be an annoying guy who plays loud music, but also helped you jumpstart your car last winter. He is a multi-dimensional human. But online, he is reduced to a single data point, a member of the other side. Our brains are being trained to prioritize the moral outrage circuit over the empathy circuit. When we spend all day in digital combat, our amygdala, the brain's fear center, becomes hypersensitized. We start living in a state of perceived existential threat, even when we are just sitting on a comfortable couch in our pajamas.
Section 3. The death of deep time. Beyond our biology and our politics, there is a third, more subtle shift: the loss of our deep time perspective. Human progress has always relied on our ability to think in long arcs. Building a cathedral, planting an orchard, or founding a democracy requires a brain that can ignore immediate impulses in favor of a distant goal. The internet, by design, is a now machine. Let's zoom out and look at the history of media. Books take weeks to read and years to write. They encourage linear thinking. Movies take 2 hours. They encourage narrative thinking. The modern internet operates in seconds. When we spend our lives responding to pings that happen right now, we lose the cognitive muscle required for long-term contemplation. Scientists have noted a phenomenon called cognitive offloading. We don't need to remember facts anymore. We just need to know where to find them. We don't need to plan routes. The GPS does it. While this makes us efficient, it also makes us fragile. If your brain is constantly being pulled into the micro now by notifications, it becomes harder to construct a macro future. We become like a captain of a ship who is so busy bailing out tiny splashes of water that he forgets to look at the compass or the stars.
Section 4. Can we fix a broken brain? So, is it over? Is the human brain destined to become a shriveled, outraged grape, twitching for the next notification until the sun burns out? In reality, the situation is hopeful because our brains have a superpower: neuroplasticity. Just as the brain can downregulate and lose sensitivity, it can also heal. Studies show that even a few days away from hyper-stimulating digital environments can begin to reset our dopamine thresholds. The receptors start to grow back. The volume of the world begins to return to normal. But we can't just rely on individual willpower. You wouldn't tell someone to just be stronger while they are standing in a room filled with addictive gas. We need to rethink the social architecture of the digital world. What if platforms were designed for time well spent instead of engagement? What if algorithms prioritized slow growth content over viral outrage? Currently, we're in the cigarette phase of the internet. For decades, smoking was considered cool and harmless, until we realized it was literally rotting our lungs. We're just now realizing that unregulated information flow might be doing something similar to our collective psyche.
Conclusion: the human connection. The internet is arguably the most powerful tool we have ever built. It has given us the sum of all human knowledge in our pockets. It allows a scientist in Tokyo to collaborate with a student in Nairobi in real time. It is a miracle. But we must remember that we are using 21st century technology with version 1.0 Stone Age brains. Our biology wasn't built for the infinite scroll. Maybe the way forward isn't to throw our phones into the ocean, but to acknowledge our own biological vulnerability. When you feel that itch to refresh or that surge of anger at a stranger's comment, take a breath. Recognize it for what it is: an ancient circuit being tripped by a modern line of code. We are more than our dopamine pings. We are a species capable of art, philosophy, and deep, quiet love. Things that don't always fit into a 15-second clip. The internet might be trying to break our brains, but the reset button is always there. It's located just outside your window, in the pages of a thick book, or in the eyes of a friend sitting across the table. Perhaps it's time we looked up.